Good evening. Good evening to all of my future millionaires out there listening. Today we have a special guest on the show. Our special guest is going to talk to us specifically about changing our lives, changing our opportunities with the tool of real estate. His specialty is creative real estate and investing and how to get properties with little to no money down, team building, and networking. He's a founder, CEO, mentor, investor extraordinaire, the heart and soul behind CREI LLC. He's a true embodiment of integrity and warmth in the world of business. I want to welcome to the Millionaire by Morning show today, Mr. Mark Monroe. Good evening.
Who are you?
I'd like to thank you for coming to the show today, taking your time out. I'm always excited about the opportunity to speak with someone who can change others' lives. I know that there's a lot of people out there that know that real estate is a wealth building tool. However, not everyone knows how to get involved. No one, not everyone knows um, the best strategies and the best structures. And it's always good to get that information from someone who's an expert in the field. So I really appreciate you for coming on today. And if you could just give us a little insight into your background and when you figured out that real estate was the way.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. And all your listeners, thank you so much. Yeah, so I started my journey. I grew up in a small town up in Vermont, up in the cold, and didn't come from a wealthy family at all. It was my mother raised me and my two sisters. There's three of us. So she had some challenges. It was really tough. And, when we were growing up, all of our clothes was hand-me-downs from my cousins, type of thing. And, being up there, and we are just talking about before we got on here, the cold. And I remember, for a winter, we all had to sleep on the kitchen floor because we had to use the stove as the heat, keeping us warm. I remember that happening. And then that same winter, during that same time period, I don't know if it was that winter or fall, it's more towards the fall, but for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all we had, besides, when I went to school, I had a little bit of different things, but majority breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the Kraft macaroni box and cheese, like those at the time, like 29 cents. That's all we ate for 3 months. So it's just, so I knew, yeah, so I knew when I was young, to be able to get anywhere, I had to just do it all on my own. And I started working at the age of 14 to 15. I had to pay bring $25 a week just to help put food on the food at the home. So I started, believe it or not, started out at McDonald's, and McDonald's changed my life, believe it or not. It really, really did. It's just I learned so much from other managers that were mentors. I learned how to handle people skills. I ended up working my way up to being a small regional manager for them. And then what happened was I transferred from there down to the Washington, D.C. area after being with them for 10 years, believe it or not. I worked my way up. I was a senior in high school. I was a store manager managing 170 employees. And I was like in high school. Think about that.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and that's where I really learned my business skills and people handling skills and learning how to put procedures in place. But at the time, I didn't respect the dollar. I did not respect. I was too immature of really respecting money, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
That does.
Um, yeah, I think it happens to all of us. We just kind of we don't know how to budget. If you grow up not learning how to analyze and how to put your budget in place and respecting money, and the school system at the time didn't even teach you how to balance your checkbook. They didn't teach you any of that stuff. And if your parents didn't know it, you didn't learn that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty nowadays, you guys have the internet, so you can kind of go out there and do research and watch videos, so you can kind of learn from them. But back then, we didn't have that opportunity. So, anyways, I ended up going down the DC area, Washington D.C., and I wanted to learn a little bit more about real estate. I did do my first deal when I was 19, but at this time I was probably I took about 3 or 4 years maybe off before I got back into it because I wanted to learn more about corporations and growing businesses. But after 10 years, I took some time off and well, I took 2 months off. You get 2 months off of paid vacation. So I wanted to go learn a little bit more about real estate. So I went and took this loan origination course. And the instructor said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" After I did a week course, and never went back. That's where I started and met my two business partners at that time at this company. We were there for about a year and a half, and we ended up blowing we went and opened our own real estate banking office and ended up having 107 loan officers that ended up working for us, and it really kind of blew up. And that's kind of how I got into it. And what happened was a lot of my clients were real estate investors where I became friends with and just started learning all the different real estate strategies through my real estate banking background. So that's how I really got into it. I started with nothing. I had nothing. And, now, I was buying when I did my first real estate deal at 19, I had no clue what I was doing. Didn't have any money. So most of these are like seller financing strategies. And there's many different strategies within seller financing strategies and techniques how to purchase properties with nothing down.
I want to get into I would like to get into the strategies. But it sounds to me like when you work for McDonald's, I've heard this story before, like, you know, there was there was a pathway to go through McDonald's. Like they would literally, you could just grasp on to what it is to know people, to basically, if you've ever watched a movie on Netflix about McDonald's, the story behind it, it was basically built on real estate. That's how it became so successful, was behind the real estate. So would you say that this is something that you just grasped onto, or did you have a mentor at the time that was kind of like, hey, listen, man, you need to invest into real estate. This is where it's at. Don't spend your money, going, because you jumped off the porch pretty early as far as real estate is concerned. So I guess the question is, did you have a mentor telling you that, or you just kind of picked up on it?
Many, many, many mentors. You always want mentors to be able to help bring you and lift you to other levels. Mentors, even when I was at McDonald's, where I wanted to learn more and get promoted. So other managers were my mentors. Then when I took that course, that instructor, he became my mentor and said, "Hey, why don't you come work for me?" Because I started networking. I always network through the process, and the key to real estate and in business in general is networking and surround yourself with really intelligent individuals that's going to help lift you. I always like to be, even myself, I'm always constantly looking for other mentors where I can learn something different. I
Right.
like being I like being the stupidest person in a room, because I can learn from them and kind of grow and lift me up. But when I got into opening my own business up, being a loan officer, and then learning real estate, open up business, a lot of my clients were other investors that were doing business, and I went to them and made them my mentor. I didn't ask them. I just started asking questions. And then when I asked questions, I was listening. How can I bring value to this mentor so they're willing to teach me? So the key to it is when you want somebody to teach you, no matter what, if you're learning business or real estate, how can you bring value? And so I was like, okay, how can I go find a deal for this guy and bring a deal to him and then get him give me a referral fee and be a bird dog, if you will. That's how I kind of started into it. And throughout all these different things, you always have mentors, and you want to outgrow your mentor, if that makes sense. You want different mentors, and then okay, I learned from here. Now it's time for me to move on to another mentor, and just look for different people that's going to help you to keep growing and lift yourself up to other levels.
Understood. Understood. So ground zero, entry level, bird dog, that's wholesaling, right? That's a strategy. So as far as strategies, you're coming into it, you say, hey, I want to get into real estate. Bird dogging is one way. but you have other options or strategies that say you don't need all of the money down, but you can still be a real estate investor. Is that correct?
100%. We did 13 units not too long ago with zero down. We closed on August 30th, not this past August, August before. Closed on August 30th, 13 units with zero down. We did have to pay a little bit of closing costs. It was like $4,500. But then what happened was, and that was just closing costs, transfer taxes and stuff like that to acquire the asset. But then we closed on August 30th. 2 days later, we collected a little bit more than $10,000 worth of rent checks on September 1st. That was zero down. And that came from a bird dog, believe it or not. I have bird dogs. I have over 600 bird dogs that go out there looking for me for bringing me deals. Um, Landscapers, snowplow removals, Amazon drivers, Uber drivers, um, anybody out in the field. But where a lot of my great deals come from are from hospice nurses. That's where I get some, and that's where this deal came from. It came from a hospice nurse. And what happened was this particular one, the father um, had a bunch of rentals through his community. He had, I don't know how many, but he passed away 8 years prior to this. And then the daughter, at the time was 28. She took it over and she ran it for about 5 years. And what happened was during the summer, she got in a motorcycle accident. And so then the mother had to step in and take care of everything, and she couldn't do it. So it was just too much for her, leaky toilets and all that. So the other daughter reached out to me, or actually talked to the hospice nurse, and they all reached out to me and asked, "Hey, would you be willing to purchase this property?" And so I just got on the phone, talked to the seller. I'm like, "How much money do you need a monthly to live off of?" And she just said, "Hey, I need 2,500 a month." So I got her down to 2,200, and we're cash flowing roughly. After we got it stabilized and everything, we're cash flowing about $6,500, $6,400 a month on that property right now.
Okay. Okay. Oh man. All right. Um, as far as marketing goes, with what you just explained, not only are you marketing to the bird dogs, to the hospice nurses, you also have to market the fact that you are an investor, and then you also market that you have these properties for sale. Do I have that correct?
Well, I want to kind of hold on to a lot of them, but I will sell some of them. And I do, depending on what my strategy is. If I'm buying a property through a seller financing strategy and they want it paid off in like 3 or 5 years, then I will turn around and sell. So what I like to do a lot of times is I like to buy a property through seller financing and then sell it through seller financing and stay in the middle and create the arbitrage. I'll give you another example. I just had one that came not too long ago. Another one came from a hospice nurse. This was up in New England, and there's an elderly couple. He's been in hospice for about I think 3 months. And just so you guys know, you know how I think we might want to explain what hospice nurses are, so the
Okay.
listeners, some of them,
Right.
do you want to explain that?
So I can explain hospice. Hospice is where you go when you're about ready to pass away. A hospice nurse is the person that takes care of you during this process. So I think you can see why marketing to them, and being that we have elderly generation this time and age and the boomer society and all of that, um, having a good networking relationship with hospice nurses is a good way to go at this time.
Yeah, exactly. And these are, and a lot of times the hospice nurses in these cases are people at home. They want to be at home and, the last journey of life, if you will.
Right.
Um, so what I tend to do, this particular one, they reach out to me, um, and they've owned this home for, I think, 35, 38 years, and it was just too much for them to put on the market with a realtor. They getting the whole house cleaned up. So they called me up. They said, "Hey, would you be willing to purchase this property?" And the biggest is just like I'm like, just leave what you want, whatever you don't want, we'll take care of it. And I mean, they left everything: cable boxes, modems, holiday decorations, TV. They left so much stuff. And what I tend to do is I always give two offers. I'll give a cash offer, and that's usually lower at a lower discount, or I will give them a seller financing offer. And I'm always willing to pay top dollar for a property close to the value, as long as they're willing to give me terms. So they gave me a 7-year term. And also, I got 2 months with no mortgage payment, so it gave me time to go and clean the property all up. And what we did is I brought an auction company in. They auctioned everything off, took that money, did some light cosmetics. The rate with the seller at that time was about 4%. I turned around, so I purchased and seller financing. My payment to them is $991 a month. I marked it up $79,000, added to the purchase price, and my rate to my end buyers at 7.5. They're paying me roughly about close to $2,300 a month. That $2,300, I got to give the seller $991 or not $992 a month. So I cash flow the arbitrage difference. So that's how the seller financing strategy on that particular one works.
Okay. Okay. That's seller financing. And what I would like to do, because you have a book, and we're kind of getting into the book as we're speaking. So what I would like to do, same as we did with the hospice, is let's it's not, there it is, Creative Real Estate Investor by Mark Monroe. And that's available on Amazon. I'm going to ask you a couple of I'm going to give you a couple of just real estate terms. And if you could just, these are all terms that you speak about in your book. So if you could, you don't have to spend a lot of time on them, but if you could just briefly explain what they each mean. So we've done strategies for seller finance. Okay, lease option.
Sure. Yeah, lease option. The easiest way to explain this is a rent to own. That's an easy way of doing it. And that's how I really started. My first strategies was doing lease options. I call them sandwich lease options. So the example that I just gave you through seller financing is the exact same thing, but you're doing a lease agreement with a seller. You're doing a rent agreement. So let me give you an example. I did one not too long ago. Came from a realtor. It was outside of Orlando. So I would go into a lease agreement with the owner of the property, a rent to own, and I go to the seller, hey, I want to do a rent to own on this property, and I'll take care of the maintenance and repairs up to like 3,500. Anything more than that, most likely the homeowner's insurance would have to kick in for whatever reason. The market rent on this property was $1,350 at the time. She was a real estate agent, and I negotiated with her, and I told her I'll give her top dollar for that price. What she wanted was $179,000, because after she went and when somebody came in and beat him up, they'll probably offer $10,000 less. Then she's got real estate fees. So I said, I'll give you the $179,000 on a 30-month term. Okay. But it also allows me to sublet it, meaning I can put somebody else into the property. So I negotiated with her. She had somebody in the property, they were going to move out in like 50 days. So I negotiated with her to get the payment down to $1,200 a month. I'll take care of the maintenance repairs, and I only had to put 2 months down for this property. So to get into this property, those $2,400 I'd have to. But I didn't have to put that $2,400 down until I took possession of that property, and that was roughly 50 days. So what I did is I just gave her $100 to lock up the contract. And then what I did, I also said, long as I make my payments on or before the due date of the rent that's due, I get $150 a month each month credit applied towards that purchase price. Okay. So if you do that math over 30 months, you'll see then that adds up good. So then what I did is I turned around and market the property for another buyer that wanted to get into it as a rent to own, marked it up to $214,000. And the rent to me was $1,500, and they had to put down first month, last month, and security and 3%. So for them to get into this property, they had to put down a little bit more than $11,000. It was like $11,300. So I got $11,300 on the front end, which I gave out of that the seller her $2,400. So I got about $8,600 up front, something like that. Then I cash flowed $300 a month over 30 months. And then when they purchased at the end, I got the remaining distance. That whole entire deal cost me $100, and I ended up making $50,000, a little bit more than $50,000 on that deal.
God dog it. All right. All right. I don't know
And
where my button is at.
and I didn't property. I never took position. I just controlled it through a lease option agreement. So that is one of the best strategies to get into if you don't have money.
A lease option agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
In
a good one.
wholesaling. In wholesaling. Wholesaling is a little tough right now with the market condition, but when the market's hot, wholesaling is good. But that's called a lease option. I call it a sandwich lease option. You're sandwiching it together. But that is a lease option. So, it's a rent to own. That's really what it is. It's a rent to own. You're controlling it through a contract, allowing you to sublet it. You can also, that was good for a while for Airbnbs. Also, right now is senior home living. I'm looking at doing that stuff because the seniors getting older. I'm looking to rent a property with an option to purchase it, lock it in, and then go ahead and look for like a 5-7 bedroom, put seniors in it, and get like roughly $3,000 to $4,000 to $7,000 a month, and have a couple of nurses there to help take care of the elderly. So I'm doing those right now.
Right. I've heard of those. I've heard of a couple of people doing those here down in Texas. Is the lease option. So the lease option, sandwich lease option, and rent to own are basically under the same umbrella.
Right. It's the same thing, but when I talk to sellers and people, I always say rent to own because they understand it. A lot of people don't know what a lease option is. Many years ago, and when I was explaining a lease option to a seller, they wouldn't do it because they didn't understand it. So I just kind of make it a little bit more in simpler terms.
Right, right. Okay. All right. And to be honest with you, this right here, because the listeners, let's just say is someone, no matter how on this show particularly, it's about, mindset and, just changing your mindset to be able to get into all of this, to, you know, become what it is that you want to be. So whether it's somebody that is on the spectrum at a very, very high level, or someone at a very low level, I kind of want to be able to explain to either one of them. So that's why I'm like, let's just do definitions a lot of the time. And then, they'll be able to grasp it or go get your book and learn more about it, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. You're correct. Just kind of all the different terms because a lot of people don't understand some of the terms. So their heads, just like, when I got into certain things, I'll hear something like, what does that mean? So
Right.
I like to try to make it down as simple as possible.
That's right. That's right. The lowest denominator is always the best. Let's go with contract for deed.
Sure. So a contract for deed. Well, let's do this because you're going to ask the next one and then I'll come back. You're going to ask what subject to is.
Subject to existing mortgage.
Yeah. Let's go there first and we'll come back to
Okay.
contract for deed because it's going to be easier to explain.
Okay.
So the other strategy is subject to the existing mortgage. So that's the other one. So this is a property that has an existing mortgage
Mhm.
that you're taking over. You're not assuming it. You're taking over subject to because when you assume it, you have to go to that particular lender and qualify and get a loan. So that's what assumable is. Subject to is you're keeping the loan in place. Say a listener, if you have a house out there, um, I'm going to buy the property from you, but the loan is going to stay in your name and you're going to transfer the property over to me and I'm going to make the payments on your behalf. So that is what's called a subject to.
Okay.
Um, Usually, those are like properties where the seller's distress, they might be behind in a mortgage. You have to bring money to the table. You're putting money capital into the property for bringing it current. Say they might be 2 or 3 months behind. You're giving a seller a little bit of money to move and go on. I did one not too long ago. Let me give you an example of one that I did during COVID. There's another property in Orlando. She was trying to sell it for $307,000. Okay. And but she owed on the mortgage at that time 282,000. And what happened was it was a large home, it was a 5 bedroom home, and she purchased it with one of her adult children. And her commute was from Orlando, Ocala. So she was driving about an hour and 20 minutes each way. And something happened with her and the daughter or whatever, and they moved out. So it was just her. Now she was 2 months behind in the mortgage. But the problem was when she was trying to sell it for 307. She couldn't sell it, but she was also, after you pay closing costs and realtor fees, she was actually going to come out of pocket about $1,400 to get rid of this house. She was going to have to come out of pocket for it. So then I said, all right, I'll buy. She knew the realtor, said, okay, I'll buy it from you. I'll take over the mortgage. Well, what happened was I got on the phone, asked her what she needed. She goes, I wanted to move closer to work. And she goes, I need $10,000 to move. I said, okay, this is what I'll do is I will give you $10,000 to move, and I'm going to take over the mortgage and make those payments on your behalf. And she was so happy. She's like, okay, yes, yes. Then COVID hit. So then she fell behind 2 months on that property because she couldn't make the payment anymore. She was starting to fall behind there a little bit. She was stressing out. So COVID hit. We still agreed to the terms. By the end of June, we went and closed on it. This was early February, March, when we kind of arranged to this because then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I agreed to buy that property to take over the mortgage. So I was, 282 plus $10,000 to move, and then 2 months. Her payments on that were $2,100 a month. So I was into it for close to $300,000. I was going to be into it, but I only had to give her $10,000 up front to move, brought the mortgage current. So I was total out of pocket was $16,000 for me to buy this, to take this property over. So then I went and found another buyer. I did a rent to own buyer on my back end. So I purchased it subject to take the seller, keep the mortgage in place, transfer the property to me, and then I went and found an end buyer as a rent to own. I marked it up 300 because the time what happened was by this time the property jumped up. It was now worth 300 and like $25,000. Okay. I went and marked this up to I marked it up $379,000 because if I'm selling it on future value, I can sell it for a premium, and they usually bump it up about 10%. And this was going to be on a 4-year contract. So I marked it up $379,000, and the payment to me was $2,800. So I was cash flowing $700 a month on this, and they had to put a down payment. They put $22,000 down. So at $22,000, it cost me $16,000 to get into it. So I made some money on the front end. Then I made $700 a month cash flow. So they're supposed to exercise their option of a September of last year. They called me up at Christmas time saying, hey, we're not going to buy this property. We're going to end up moving. We have to move for whatever reason. And they're worried about their down payment that they put down because the down payment is technically non-refundable. So what I did is I didn't have to refund them the money. I went and looked it up. I sold them that property for 379,000. I went and looked that property up on comps. This is when the market took off. That property was worth $465,000 now. So I go to them. I said, "This is what I'll do: is you had some wear and tear. I'm going to deduct $5,000, and long as I'll give you $11,000, $12,000 back because some of the monthly payments went. I'll give you $12,000 back as long as you help me find a buyer for that property. I'm sorry, allow me to show the property, and once I get cash, I'll give you that money back." I turn around and then found my end buyer. I ended up making $109,000 spread on that, not counting the $700 a monthly cash flow over that time period, almost like 3.5 years. So that's the subject too.
That's the subject too.
Got any questions on that one?
This is definitely interesting. Because when you hear of real estate not being able to buy or being able to buy properties with no money down, I believe that the common idea is that you're looking for properties that are worn, torn, burned, properties that the grass has grown up. No one, someone is dead in the family, and someone just wants to get rid of it and sell it. So I think when people hear I can buy something with no money down, those are the properties that they're looking for. However, it sounds like what you're saying is you can still find other properties subject to existing mortgage, and it just depends on the seller's situation. Do I have that correct?
You hit the nail on the head. The bottom line to do real estate deals, especially the seller financing, is listening to the seller. What is the seller's problem and how to solve it, and you being creative enough to solve the seller's problem. That is the name of this game, is understanding and listening to the sellers and how you can solve the problem. And yes, you are correct. Wholesaling, finding rundown properties, again, listening to the seller. You hit the nail right on the head.
Okay. Okay. So you're not necessarily, well, when you're first getting started, you're a person, a novice, and you're looking for your first property. Now you can go to ride around, what do they call, driving for dollars, going around looking for certain properties. However, you never know if that person in that good neighborhood that you may be driving through, where the houses are at 300 and something thousand, depending on the divorce that they're about to get, depending on the death in their family, that they may have a similar circumstance that you can be creative and figure out a solution for and come out on top.
100%. I mean, there's so many reasons why a seller will sell through one of these options. There's so many, and even experienced investors. Like I love, people that own a property that are investors like 12, 15 plus years, because they don't like to sell it because they don't want to get hit with all that capital gains at once. So they'll sell it through a seller financing strategy, and they like that monthly passive income. So those are awesome too. I like those type of deals. But we got to talk about the land contract in a minute when you have a moment. We'll get to that.
The land contract,
Yeah.
let's come back to that because I might forget this question. Very important question. How is it the market right now, as far as being a real estate investor, the little man, compared to these corporations that are teaming up, buying up all the real estate? Like, is there still some possibility for the little man at this moment? Because like, as soon as I know, when I'm around where I'm at in my neighborhood, as soon as a property come up for sale, they are paying top dollar for it. Like, a corporation has bidded on it. They're paying top dollar for it. People who houses was worth $150 are now worth $350. Like, the last 5 or 6 years, that's been happening. And I haven't seen it, I always figure that, things will go back to normal, but yet, can you speak on that? What's going on?
Well, a lot of these corporations are little men like you and I. We're buying them through an LLC. But there's hedge funds out there purchasing them too. And that is happening. But there's so many deals out there. It's just about there, and it's all about building rapport. It's all about listening, networking, mindset, why they're going to do business with you.
Right.
Because like I've had two of my members that come into my program had no real estate experience whatsoever, and both of them did deals under 45 days. The average is about 4 to 6 months, but the reason why these two did deals, because they weren't worried about learning all the analysis paralysis. What about this? What about that? They jumped on the phone, listened to the sellers, build a rapport with the sellers, and because think of it this way: when you're doing these type of strategies, it's like dating.
Yeah.
You want to get to know them because you're going to be in a long-term marriage with them in a sense, because you're doing a seller financing strategy. They want to make sure that you're going to be able to take care of that property, and that property is not going to come back onto them. So that's really what it comes down to, listening to the sellers. But yeah, the corporations, yeah, they're out there buying, but they're not buying every single property. I mean, look at all the real estate out there. Even though you say there's not, when they come up, they go quickly. You are starting to see it slow down in the Texas market. You're starting to see properties sit a little bit longer than they were like before. During COVID, the market was going crazy, but there's opportunities there for everybody. Just got to get out there, network, and build those bird dogs, and have those people find deals. Like like you said, driving for dollars. Trash men are great people to refer business because they drive those neighborhoods. They know those homes that are sitting empty.
You really touched on, you answered the question to a T. And the fact of the matter is different people are looking for different strategies, different opportunities. So a seller may not necessarily want $350,000 in cash right then and there. They may just want a situation to where they just need to kind of drag it on. You know what I mean? It's something for everyone. There's something for everyone. So I see where you're saying that the strategies is what comes into place. And I also see where you have a time span based on when someone first come into a program, like you just have to learn the strategy. It's always good to be that person that would you say I always get confused with this word paralysis, analysis paralysis. You get in there and you want to do too much, you want to learn everything when really it comes down to listening. And then if you listen and see someone has a problem, you can always go to your mentor. Why it's important to have a mentor and go say, how do I make this deal work? This person here, they have this opportunity, but they showed me that this is really their problem. So listening is the number one. Listening is the number one skill, customer service, skill set. Once you have those skill sets down, you can take it to the mentor. He can build the deal for you, build the deal out. Would you agree with that?
100%. It's just listening. You got to listen. A lot of people want to speak, but ask questions. I remember I did years ago, I did a study one time or a test or whatever, and I read a book, Never Split the Difference. Great book, especially if you're in selling, negotiating. So I went to a dinner party, and I went to this dinner party, and I didn't talk about myself once. I kept asking questions about people. What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And that night when they all left me, the people that threw the party, they said, "Oh, everybody loved you. They're great." But they don't know me. I just listened. They didn't know anything about me because I didn't talk about myself once. But they
Right.
sat there, and just because I asked questions and listened to them and just kept asking questions, they end up loving me. But they don't know anything about me. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah. That's something, man. It's something. And I don't know, with the invention of social media, now we can kind of figure out a way to stay in those same people's faces without attending all of the networking opportunities. Um, we can still stay in their faces, but once they get to know you, what you said earlier, it's a longer term, like a marriage. So when you're making these type of deals, that's what it's based on: is do these people really like you and really want to deal with you? That's part of marketing as well. So I'll get on to the next question. Land deed.
The land contract?
Yes, the land contract.
Sure, sure. So land contracts, agreement for deed, contract for deed, it's all the same thing. So what it is, it's a hybrid between the subject to and a sandwich lease option. So what you do is it's more of the subject to. The only difference is you go to closing and you sign the deed. Instead of the deed transferring over to you, it sits in escrow at the closing agent. So then the seller, because sometimes the seller's going to be like, "Are you nuts? Are you out of your mind? Why would I transfer that property out of my name?" So, all right, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do an agreement for deed or land contract, and you just sign an agreement, and it just sits there. But you're taking care of all the stuff. The mortgage stays in their name, but you sit there and you make the payments on their behalf. So it's really the same type of process on that. So it's a hybrid in between. So the deed's not in your name, it's still in the seller's, but you still have all the control and you get the tax benefits. So versus a lease option, uh, it's everything is in the seller's name. It's just a rental agreement. This agreement for deed or land contract is you actually do a closing and you take the deed into yours. And that's where the closing costs. That's where I said when you buy, I had to pay $4,000, $4,500 for closing costs versus a lease option. All I did was like first, last, and security. So that's really where the difference is on that. But I'd like to talk a little bit more. Do you have any questions on that? But I'd like to talk a little bit more of what you were saying before about networking and listening, because I think that's key. Do you have any questions on that land contract?
No, we can We can land on that. But yeah, let's talk more about the marketing. Just whatever you wanted to say about the land contract, let's just touch on that. But I would definitely like to know more about getting the people to the table first.
Yeah. Listening to sellers, calling them up, finding out what they're trying to do, why they're selling. That's the number one thing. Talking to realtors, talking to sellers, why they're selling. That is the number one thing. Listen, listen, listen. You want to listen and get out there and network. That's how you grow your business. You know, no matter what business it is. But in real estate, that's how I grew my business. Is just get out there, just like what we're doing right now. We're on here on your podcast, talking, networking. So we're getting more people listening to us, so we can kind of bring more people in. Um, Let me give you another example about networking. You're in Dallas area. I'm in South Florida. Um, what I like to do is I like to go to conventions, industry conventions, not real estate related, just any type of convention. It could be a marketing, like you're marketing, so we can go like a marketing convention. But let me give you an example of one that I did not too long ago. Actually, it was probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. So there's a cardiac physician convention going on in Miami, cardiac physicians. And but I can't go into the convention because I'm not a physician. But I knew where they're all staying. They're all at the Ritz-Carlton. So what I did is I went down to the lobby bar. Guess where all the networking is done? They're done at the lobby, hotel bars, wherever you're at these conventions. So I went down there, sat at this lobby bar, and just started finding out, hey, what do you do? I knew there were physicians. Hey, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I do real estate. And oh, I'd love to get into real estate. I just don't have the time. Ding, 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 ding. No matter what industry you're in, if somebody's interested and they have capital, I ended up raising $450,000 because I sat there and I went down there and networked, for other type of real estate deals just for listening to people like, oh, I'd love to get into real estate, or I'd love to get into marketing, I'd love to get into this type of business. And like you said, you have social media. So I become friends with them. And a lot of times they won't throw money at you at first. They want to see what you're doing. So you meet them, connect with them on social media, let them start following you. And no matter what you're doing in your business, and then touch base with them. And then that's how you build your network.
Definitely. That's marketing. That's marketing 101. I have a question to ask based on that, based on you being a realtor. I follow like Grant Cardone. So I understand the raising funds. As a realtor, when you say raising funds, is that based on a particular property that you are investing in, or I guess I can say have already invested in, or already have under contract? Or is that saying we're investing right now so we can buy, so we can go look for potential contracts?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm not a realtor. I'm an investor. So, because I don't have a real estate license, I'm an investor. So, what I do is just like, hey, when they say that, I just said, hey, I work with other people such as yourself that want to get in real estate. They don't have the time, and they put their capital to work with me because I come across all these amazing different type of opportunities in my business in real estate. Um, like for example, it could be like a storage facility. Hey, well, let's get a bunch of investors together, buy a storage facility.
Right.
Mainly, I'm talking right now. We're talking about residential because it's easier to learn residential and it's easier to do seller financing. Well, you could actually, I do a lot of seller financing and commercial too, but there's a lot less moving parts. So that's why I always talk residential first, because that's where you want to start. And then you can kind of go into the higher levels. But yeah, like look at Grant Cardone. I mean, that guy's raising capital to buy multifamily, A class. So just back to what your comment was on that.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to get a clear view, or for anyone out there that didn't have a clear view of what raising capital was about. Um, but yeah, as an investor and just knowing what you're doing, there's people that will get behind you, and there's different creative ways to just make more money. You have a website, TI
Something
Assets.
else that, yep, yep. But just to say something else on to that though, if you're going to be working with investors, you want to make sure you have really good ethics. It's ethics mean everything because you'll get a bad name real quick. You know, if something happens and a deal goes bad or in business or whatever, deal with that directly. Deal with it immediately, head on. Don't try to avoid and try to skirt around it because it's going to come up sooner or later. I'm the type of person I'll pick up the phone and get ahead of it and tell whatever the situation, if something's going bad or whatever, or the hey, the roof collapsed or whatever it may be, no matter what in business, like, hey, we're generating some marketing. Our marketing channel went down. So your salespeople, I just want to be, get ahead of it no matter what business you're in. And always stand, your word means everything in business. So make sure whatever you say, you stand behind it no matter what you do, and always be able to, so you put your head down on a pillow at night. I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of put that out there because if you're growing your business and you want to get there, you have to stand to your word and always hold yourself accountable to make sure whatever you say, stand behind your word to the whoever you're doing business with.
That's a definite. I'm glad you said that, Mark. Also, to add on to that, it's not the best idea to just work with anyone as well. So you should have some strategies and you should have some, build a form out. What type of person, a certain avatar that you are willing to work with and won't work with. And it's all good. Like it's not, people shouldn't get upset about that. If it's not a good match, it's just not a good match. But here we are talking about the investment of real estate. It is said that 90% of the world's wealth is created with real estate. So if you're really looking into changing your life and you're looking to create generational wealth, we have Mark Monroe on the show today. And our reason for having him on the show today is because he's someone that can point you in that direction, take you down that road. Mark, where can people find you at if they want to follow you or be a part of your program?
Sure. Well, my website, it's my name. You can find it. It's Mark, 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 then the minus sign on the keyboard, Mark minus sign Monroe, MONROE, .com. So it's MARK minus sign Monroe, MONROE. Or just look me up, real estate, Mark Monroe. I should be able to come up through any of the social media platforms. Okay. This is great. I really enjoyed this. And, you're amazing in the questions, and I love it. You understand a lot of this stuff, so it's great that you understood a lot of this. So I can't ask you thank you enough for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Let's keep in touch, man. This was awesome, and we're really growing the show to have actionable steps where people that are on the show are teaching people that's listening. This is what you can do. Step A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. So first step, Amazon.com. Go buy Mark Monroe's book, and from there, give him a follow and continue to learn from him. Continue to learn from real estate and get rich quick as you can. All right, Mark, you have a great night. I'll talk to you again soon.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right, bye.